Kayla leaned against the window of her family's SUV, watching the houses grow larger, lawns greener, and driveways longer as they drove deeper into Greenwood Hills. Her mother turned around, her face glowing with excitement, and her father shot her an encouraging smile from the driver's seat. "This is it, Kayla," her mother exclaimed, her voice filled with pride. "A fresh start. In one of the best neighborhoods in the city. And Greenwood Middle School. Just imagine the opportunities." Kayla tried to match her mother's enthusiasm, but something held her back, a small, sinking feeling that no one else seemed to share. She looked out the window, scanning for familiar faces, anyone who looked like her. Instead, every face she saw was a stranger's, glancing at her with brief, polite smiles that quickly disappeared. "Here we are," her father announced as he pulled into the driveway of their new home. The movers were already unloading boxes, and her parents rushed out, talking excitedly with the movers about where each box would go. But Kayla's eyes were still on the houses down the street. A line of near-identical buildings with manicured lawns and spotless exteriors. Everything was so neat, so uniform, like a picture of perfection she didn't feel ready to be a part of. "Kayla?" Her mother's voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned and saw her mom reaching out, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "This is a great place for us. Honey, it'll be a little adjustment, but you'll fit right in." "I know it." Kayla forced a smile, nodding as they began unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and turning this new house into something resembling home. As the hours passed, her family's excitement settled around her, easing some of her unease. Maybe she was overthinking it. Maybe tomorrow, at school, things would be easier than she expected. But that night, lying in her bed, surrounded by boxes and the silence of the unfamiliar neighborhood, her nerves returned. She thought about Greenwood Middle School, about the students she'd soon meet, and the teachers whose lessons she'd be learning. She imagined herself in the crowded cafeteria, where she'd have to find a table to sit at, hoping there'd be a welcoming smile. The quiet darkness seemed to deepen her anxieties, and she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "It'll be fine," she whispered to herself. But her words hung in the air, unanswered and unconvincing. Underscore 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 underscore. The next morning, Kayla dressed carefully, smoothing out her shirt and tucking her hair behind her ears as she looked at herself in the mirror. She adjusted her backpack strap, took a deep breath, and forced a smile. "Today will be good," she told herself. She had no choice but to believe it. At Greenwood Middle, the school hallways buzzed with laughter and chatter, with clusters of students filling the space, each absorbed in their conversations. Kayla took a tentative step forward, feeling every eye turn her way as she passed. Some glanced away quickly, others whispered to their friends, and a few didn't bother, hiding their open curiosity. She ducked her head, gripping the strap of her backpack and keeping her gaze on the polished floors, which seemed endless before her. When she reached her first class, she paused outside the door, taking one last deep breath. It was now or never. Inside, the teacher, a tall woman with a stern look and piercing eyes, paused in the middle of the lesson, glancing up as Kayla stepped in. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," she announced, her voice crisp and direct. "Kayla, would you like to introduce yourself?" Kayla forced a small smile, her heart pounding as she spoke.
"Hi.
"I'm Kayla," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A few students snickered, exchanging glances. Kayla's cheeks warmed as one boy leaned over to his friend, muttering just loud enough for her to hear, "Guess they're letting anyone in here now." The words hit her like a sharp, invisible slap. She pretended she hadn't heard, gripping her notebook tightly and focusing on the teacher, who seemed unfazed by the comment. Miss Parker continued with her lesson as if nothing had happened, her voice a steady monotone as she recited facts from the textbook. But for Kayla, the moment lingered, each second feeling like an eternity as she sat there, aware of every eye that glanced her way. Underscore 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 underscore. By lunchtime, Kayla's earlier optimism had all but disappeared. She scanned the crowded cafeteria, hoping to find a friendly face, someone willing to share a table. Spotting an empty seat at a table where a few girls were chatting, she hesitated before walking over. "Is it okay if I sit here?" she asked, her voice tentative. One of the girls, blonde with a high ponytail, barely looked up before shrugging.
"Yeah.
"Whatever," she muttered, her tone dismissive. Kayla set her tray down, trying to feel part of the group. But as soon as she sat her down, she felt a change in the air. The girls glanced at each other, shifting slightly as if her presence was unwelcome. One girl leaned close to another, whispering just loud enough for Kayla to hear. "Doesn't she know we don't want her here?" Another girl snickered.
"This is going to be interesting," she said,
her tone dripping with sarcasm. Kayla's face flushed, her stomach tightening as she tried to focus on her food. But every bite felt heavy, her appetite gone. She kept her head down, doing her best to ignore the whispered insults and stifled laughs. She could feel their eyes on her, studying her, judging her. She wasn't sure how long she could keep pretending it didn't bother her. Finally, she couldn't take it any longer. She picked up her tray and walked briskly to the disposal area. Feeling every mocking gaze on her back, she dropped her tray, her hands shaking as she tried to steady herself. She felt her heart pounding in her chest, a weight pressing down on her. And yet, she held her head high, willing herself not to break, not to let them see her pain. The bell rang, signaling the start of her next class. Kayla took a deep breath, gathering her strength, and moved forward. She had no choice but to keep going, to push through, hoping that somehow tomorrow would be easier. Kayla woke the next morning with a sense of unease settling deep in her chest. Her mind raced through the previous day, the whispers, the stares, the harsh words she'd overheard. She had spent the entire evening convincing herself it was just first-day jitters, that today would be different. But as she stepped through the doors of Greenwood Middle School, that tiny spark of hope felt weaker than ever.
Determined to blend in,
she took a seat near the back of her history class, careful to avoid drawing attention. Miss Parker was already at the front, her voice crisp as she launched into a lesson on early civilizations. Kayla kept her head down, determined to stay focused and not give her classmates or Miss Parker any reason to single her out. After a while, Miss Parker glanced around the room, searching for someone to answer a question about the reading. Kayla raised her hand, eager to show that she had prepared, that she was capable and ready to participate. Miss Parker's eyes fell on her, and for a split second, Kayla thought she might actually call on her. But then she saw the slight lift of Miss Parker's eyebrow, the unimpressed look that sent a chill down her spine. "Are you sure you know the answer, Kayla?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. "I don't want you to embarrass yourself." Kayla's hand dropped slowly as her cheeks flushed. A few students chuckled, exchanging glances, clearly amused by Miss Parker's words. Kayla forced herself to look down at her notebook, the excitement she'd felt about participating disappearing in an instant. Miss Parker moved on, calling on another student who answered easily and received a nod of approval. Kayla sat in silence, her confidence shattered, trying to hold back the wave of humiliation that washed over her. She stole a glance around the room and noticed a few students smirking, as if Miss Parker's comment had somehow confirmed their own assumptions about her. The rest of the period passed in a blur, each minute stretching out painfully, every time Miss Parker's eyes swept over her. Kayla felt a familiar weight settling in her stomach, a sense of being watched,
Judged.
and found lacking. By the time the bell rang, she was desperate to leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the classroom. Underscore 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 underscore. Lunchtime arrived, and Kayla walked into the cafeteria, her eyes scanning the tables. She spotted a few familiar faces, but avoided them, unsure if she could handle another round of cold stares and whispered insults. Instead, she found an empty table near the back and sat alone, hoping that maybe she could eat her lunch in peace.
But the peace didn't last.
Not long after she'd opened her sandwich, she heard a voice behind her. "Look who's sitting all alone again," a girl sneered. Kayla didn't turn around, but she could hear the barely concealed laughter of a small group nearby. Guess nobody told her she doesn't belong here. The words stung, sharp and cutting. Kayla's appetite vanished, and she clenched her fists under the table, willing herself not to react. She focused on her breathing, doing her best to block out the whispers and snickers that filled the air around her. Just as she was about to get up and leave, she noticed someone watching her from across the cafeteria, a girl with kind eyes and a warm smile, waving her over. Kayla hesitated, glancing at the table she'd just left and the sneering faces surrounding it. With a deep breath, she picked up her tray and walked toward the welcoming table.
Hey.
"I'm Alicia," the girl said as Kayla sat down, her voice gentle and reassuring. "You don't have to sit by yourself. They're just like that sometimes." Kayla managed a small, grateful smile. "Thanks. I didn't expect things to be so hard." Alicia nodded knowingly. "It's tough when you're new, especially here." She gestured to the others at the table. A boy with thoughtful eyes named Raj, and a girl with a relaxed smile named Leah. "This is Raj and Leah." "Hi," Raj said, offering a friendly nod. "Greenwood can be a bit exclusive, but don't worry, we're not all like them." Leah grinned, leaning forward. "Seriously, they act like this place is some kind of exclusive club or something. It's so dumb. Don't let them get to you." Kayla felt a warmth spreading in her chest, a small spark of comfort among the darkness she'd been carrying. For the first time since she'd walked into Greenwood Middle School, she felt a hint of belonging. The four of them fell into an easy conversation, sharing stories and laughing about the ridiculousness of school cliques. Alicia talked about her struggles with being the only black girl in her old elementary school, and Raj described how people still made curry jokes around him, even in middle school. Leah shared her own frustration with the school's rigid culture, her voice filled with a blend of empathy and exasperation. "You ever need anything, just come find us," Alicia said as they gathered their trays to leave. "You're not alone." "Okay." Kayla nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thanks. I really needed this." They walked together down the hallway after lunch, and, for the first time, Kayla felt a sense of calm. But as soon as they turned the corner, she saw the familiar cold eyes of her classmates waiting for her. They whispered to each other as she passed, their stares sharp and judgmental. Kayla clenched her fists, fighting back the sting of their exclusion. The comforting words of her new friends echoed in her mind, grounding her. Yet, as she moved through the hallways, she couldn't ignore the lingering feeling of being an outsider, someone who didn't truly belong. And no matter how kind Alicia, Raj, and Leah were, Kayla knew they couldn't shield her from everything. But maybe, just maybe, they could help her find a way to stand up, to hold her ground, and to keep moving forward. Kayla arrived at school the next day with her head held high, clinging to the hope that today might be different. She'd spent the evening texting with Alicia, Raj,
And Leah.
And for the first time since coming to Greenwood, She felt she might not have to face everything alone. But as soon as she entered her homeroom, a sharp tension filled the air, like the calm before a storm. Her classmates looked up, some stifling laughter, others shooting her quick, disdainful glances. Miss Parker strode into the room, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, silencing the chatter. "All right,
Class.
settle down," she said with her usual clipped tone. She moved straight to the front of the room, her eyes scanning the students before landing on Kayla. And for a brief, unsettling moment, Kayla could have sworn there was something cold in her teacher's gaze. "Today, you'll be working on a group project for next week's presentation," Miss Parker announced. She began assigning students into groups, her voice brisk and indifferent. When she reached Kayla's name, she barely looked at her.
Kayla.
"You'll be with Owen
Sarah.
and Jason." A pit formed in Kayla's stomach. She recognized the names, the same students who had whispered about her on her first day. The ones who'd laughed at Miss Parker's remarks and exchanged smug glances every time she tried to participate. She stole a glance at them, hoping they might give her a chance. But the looks on their faces, the sneers, the slight smirks, told her everything she needed to know.
Taking a deep breath,
She walked over to their table, keeping her expression neutral as she set her books down.
"So,
"I was thinking we could start by outlining the main points," she said, trying to sound calm and confident. Owen rolled his eyes, leaning back in his chair.
oh,
"So now you're the expert," he sneered. "Just stop acting like you're so smart. No one's impressed." Kayla felt her cheeks grow hot, but she forced herself to keep her composure. "I'm just trying to help," she said quietly. "Maybe you should just keep quiet," Sarah muttered, crossing her arms. "We don't need your input." Kayla gritted her teeth, focusing on her notebook as she tried to ignore them. She told herself that if she just stayed calm and did her work, they might eventually leave her alone. But just as she was jotting down notes, she felt a sudden, hard shove from her left. Jason had leaned over, pushing her shoulder just enough to make her stumble in her seat. She caught herself, her heart pounding with a mixture of shock and anger. "Enough," she snapped, her voice trembling as she looked at Jason, her frustration boiling over. "Stop acting like you're better than me. I'm just trying to do the project, just like everyone else." Jason smirked, his face twisting in mock surprise.
oh, look.
"She's finally standing up for herself. How cute," he taunted, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. A few students nearby snickered, clearly entertained by the scene unfolding in front of them. Kayla's hands balled into fists, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. But before she could say anything more, she noticed Miss Parker watching from across the room. A flicker of hope rose in her chest. Maybe, finally, her teacher had seen what they were doing to her. But as Miss Parker approached, her expression was anything but sympathetic. Her jaw was set, her eyes cold as she looked between Kayla and her classmates.
Kayla.
"What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. Kayla opened her mouth, ready to explain. They were the ones. But Owen cut her off, his voice dripping with feigned innocence. "She's just been disruptive, Miss Parker. We were trying to work, and she wouldn't stop arguing." Sarah nodded, her expression one of false concern.
Yeah.
"She's making it impossible to get anything done." We didn't want to say anything, but Kayla stared at them, speechless, a sinking feeling washing over her as she looked up at Miss Parker, hoping she'd see the truth. "That's not true," she protested, her voice pleading. "They were the ones pushing me around. I didn't do anything." But Miss Parker's gaze hardened. "Enough, Kayla," she said sharply, cutting her off. "I don't want to hear excuses. You're disturbing the class and disrupting your group. I expected better from you." Kayla's heart pounded, a wave of helpless anger flooding her as she realized what was happening. "But they're lying," she insisted, her voice growing louder. "I didn't do anything to them. They're just blaming me because—" "Enough," Miss Parker repeated, her voice cold and unyielding. "You're causing a scene, and I don't tolerate that in my classroom. Go to the principal's office.
Now.
Kayla felt like she'd been slapped. Her mouth opened in shock, but no words came out. She looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would speak up. But all she saw were smug grins and amused glances. Her classmates were silent, their faces blank or barely hiding their satisfaction. Swallowing hard, Kayla gathered her things and stood, her shoulders tense as she made her way toward the door. The walk to the principal's office felt like a long, lonely march, her steps heavy and her mind racing with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and humiliation. When she arrived, the secretary motioned for her to sit, and she sank into a chair, her mind still reeling from everything that had just happened. Moments later, Principal Hayes called her into his office, his face a mask of forced patience as he gestured for her to sit. "Kayla, I understand there was an incident in Miss Parker's class today," he began, folding his hands in front of him. "Would you like to explain what happened?" Kayla took a deep breath, struggling to steady her voice. "I was just trying to work with my group, but they kept making fun of me. One of them even shoved me. I finally stood up for myself." Principal Hayes nodded, but his expression remained unreadable. "Miss Parker informed me that you were the one causing the disruption," he said slowly, his tone carefully controlled. "She didn't mention any other students being involved." Kayla's heart sank, her voice growing small as she tried to plead her case. "But that's not true," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've been picking on me since I got here. I couldn't take it anymore." Principal Hayes sighed, a faint look of irritation crossing his face.
Kayla.
"We can't have students causing disturbances in class. I'm going to have to give you detention. I hope this will encourage you to find more constructive ways to handle conflicts." The words hit her like a blow, the weight of the injustice pressing down on her until she could barely breathe. She opened her mouth to protest, but the look on Principal Hayes's face told her it would be pointless.
To him.
She was the problem, and nothing she could say would change that.
Yes.
"Sir," she mumbled, her voice hollow as she stood and left the office, her heart heavy with frustration and hurt. When she stepped out into the hallway, Alicia, Raj, and Leo were waiting for her, their faces filled with concern. Alicia was the first to speak, her voice laced with worry. "Kayla, what happened? Are you okay?" Kayla managed a bitter smile, though her eyes shone with unshed tears. "I got detention," she said, her voice wavering, "for standing up for myself. They were shoving me, and Miss Parker just blamed me for everything." Raj shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. "That's not fair," he muttered. "They're just looking for any excuse to put you down." "I'm so tired of it," Kayla whispered, her voice barely audible. "I keep hoping it'll get better, but it just gets worse." Alicia put a comforting arm around her shoulders, her face set with quiet determination. "We believe you.
Kayla.
We're here for you. No matter what, they're not going to get away with this." Kayla nodded, grateful for her friend's support, but the weight of her situation felt heavier than ever. As much as their words comforted her, she couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness, of being trapped in a place where no one seemed to care about the truth. As she walked home that day, her mind replayed every moment, every cold stare, every cutting remark. She was exhausted, drained from trying to fight against a system that seemed determined to silence her. But even as despair settled over her, a small voice whispered from somewhere deep inside, "This isn't over." Kayla's alarm blared early the next morning, but she didn't move. The familiar ache of dread settled heavily in her chest, rooting her to the bed. She lay there, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the quiet of her house and the distant hum of cars outside. She wished she could just close her eyes and escape this feeling of constant tension and worry. Finally, she forced herself to get up, dragging her feet as she prepared for school. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror seemed like a stranger's, tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a sadness that felt impossible to shake. She took a deep breath, whispering to herself, "It'll be okay." But the words felt empty, hollow. Downstairs, her parents were seated at the breakfast table, her mom scrolling through her tablet while her dad read the morning paper. When they saw her, they both smiled. But there was a hint of concern in her father's gaze as he took in her weary expression.
Morning. Sweetie, he said,
His voice warm. You ready for school? Kayla forced a nod, grabbing a piece of toast and forcing herself to eat. She could feel her parents' eyes on her, both of them trying to gauge if something was wrong. But she couldn't bring herself to tell them. She didn't want to burden them, didn't want to take away their pride in sending her to Greenwood, the school they'd worked so hard to get her into. Just tired, she mumbled, offering a small smile she hoped looked convincing. Her mother frowned slightly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. If there's anything bothering you, honey, you know you can talk to us. Kayla nodded, grateful for the concern but terrified of the disappointment she might see in their eyes if she told them the truth. So she kept quiet, promising herself she'd make it through today. And then, maybe tomorrow, things would be different. Underscore 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 underscore. At school, the days seemed to crawl by, each minute stretching into an eternity. Miss Parker's voice droned on during class, her sharp glances always finding Kayla, as if daring her to make a mistake. Kayla kept her head down, shrinking further into her seat, willing herself to become invisible. Every comment, every question posed by the teacher felt like a trap, and she feared any response would only invite more ridicule. By lunchtime, Kayla's nerves were frayed. She spotted Alicia,
Raj,
and Leah at their usual table and hesitated before joining them, feeling a pang of guilt for dragging them into her troubles. But when they looked up and greeted her with warm smiles, some of the tension melted away. These three were her only sanctuary, the only people who made her feel less like an outsider.
Hey, Kayla,
Alicia said, patting the seat beside her. How's it going? Kayla let out a small sigh, picking at her food. It's a lot, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Miss Parker, it's like she's waiting for me to mess up every single time. Raj rolled his eyes. Teachers like her make everything harder. When I first moved here, my teacher kept acting like she couldn't understand my accent, made me repeat myself over and over, like it was some kind of joke. Leah nodded sympathetically. People here don't even realize how they act. It's like they think they're better just because they're the majority. The group fell silent, each lost in their thoughts, sharing a mutual understanding of the unspoken rules and quiet judgments that made Greenwood Middle so challenging for them. For a moment, Kayla felt a wave of gratitude toward her friends, knowing they were the only ones who truly understood what she was going through. But even with their support, she could feel the weight of Miss Parker's constant scrutiny, the whispered judgments from her classmates, and the daily humiliation pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. Underscore 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 underscore. That night, back at home, Kayla's parents noticed her silence as they gathered for dinner. She pushed her food around her plate, her mind drifting back to every embarrassing moment from the day, every harsh comment that had chipped away at her confidence. The loneliness she felt at school seemed to follow her even here, lingering in the quiet spaces between her family's conversations. When she finished her dinner, she excused herself, claiming she had homework to do, and retreated to her room. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the exhaustion seep into her bones. Sleep became elusive, her mind replaying every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every laugh that had echoed in her ears. She tossed and turned, unable to shake the memories that haunted her. A soft knock on her door interrupted her restless thoughts. Her mother peeked inside, her face filled with concern. "Kayla, everything okay?" she asked gently. Kayla sat up, forcing a smile.
Yeah, Mom.
"Just a lot of homework, that's all." Her mother studied her for a moment, her gaze soft but searching. "You know you don't have to keep everything to yourself, right? We're here for you, no matter what." Kayla's heart twisted with guilt. She wanted to open up, to let all her worries spill out, to tell her mom everything, the bullying, the isolation, the way Miss Parker seemed to pick on her at every opportunity. But the fear of disappointing her parents held her back, the fear of seeing their pride in her school crumble. So she nodded, giving her mother another strained smile. "I know,
Mom.
I'm okay. Really." Her mother lingered for a moment, clearly unconvinced, but eventually, she nodded and stepped out, leaving Kayla alone once again. When the door clicked shut, Kayla let out a shaky breath, the silence of her room feeling heavier than ever. She hugged her pillow, feeling tears prickling at the corners of her eyes as she whispered to herself, "I just have to be strong. It'll get better." But as the days passed, that small flicker of hope grew dimmer, and the loneliness wrapped around her tighter, sinking into her like an anchor. Every night, she lay awake, wondering how much longer she could keep pretending, how much more she could take before the weight became too much to bear. Underscore 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 underscore. Kayla started missing school, waking up with a stomachache that felt as real as the dread coiling in her gut. She would tell her parents she didn't feel well,
And they?
worried but trusting, would let her stay home, thinking it was just the flu or a temporary bug. She'd spend those days curled up in bed, feeling both relieved and guilty, knowing she couldn't keep avoiding school forever. But even on the days she returned, the atmosphere only grew colder. Miss Parker's comments became sharper, her classmates' whispers more blatant, and every time she tried to stand up for herself, it felt like the walls closed in tighter, trapping her in a place where no one was on her side. The weeks dragged on, each day blending into the next, until Kayla could barely recognize herself. She went through the motions, her laughter quieter, her smiles forced. Even Alicia
Raj.
and Leah noticed her growing silence, her reluctance to share what she was going through. One afternoon, Alicia looked at her, a flicker of worry in her eyes. "Kayla, you've been missing a lot of school lately. Is everything okay?" Kayla forced a weak smile. "Yeah, just busy with homework. That's all." But she knew the truth was something darker, something she couldn't say out loud. She felt like she was slipping away,
Piece by piece.
and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find the strength to hold herself together. And yet, every morning, she put on her backpack, took a deep breath, and walked back through the doors of Greenwood Middle School, hoping that maybe, just maybe, today would be different. The morning began like any other, but Kayla had taken special care with her hair, weaving it into neat, intricate braids that she had spent hours working on with her mother the night before. They had laughed together as her mom braided each section, and for the first time in a while, Kayla had felt a glimmer of happiness. Her mother's words echoed in her mind as she admired her reflection that morning. "Your hair is beautiful.
Kayla.
It's a part of who you are. Never forget that." Kayla walked into Greenwood Middle School that morning with a spark of pride in her step, her braids swaying against her shoulders. She hoped today would be the day she could just blend in, focus on her classes, and escape the relentless taunts and stares. She found Alicia
Raj.
and Leah by the lockers, and they greeted her with warm smiles and supportive nods, instantly boosting her confidence. "Love the braids, Kayla," Alicia said, her eyes shining with approval. "You look amazing." "Thanks," Kayla replied, her cheeks warming with appreciation. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace, of belonging. But as she walked to her first class, her history class with Miss Parker, that peace was quickly shattered. She took her usual seat at the back, avoiding eye contact with her classmates, who were already whispering and casting glances her way. The murmurs grew louder as Miss Parker entered the room, her eyes scanning the class before landing squarely on Kayla. Her gaze lingered, her lips pressing into a thin, disapproving line. "Kayla, could you come up to the front for a moment?" Miss Parker called out, her voice cold and sharp. A chill shot down Kayla's spine, but she took a deep breath, standing up and making her way to the front of the classroom. She forced herself to keep her head high, though her heart pounded with each step. When she reached Miss Parker's desk, she glanced at her teacher, only to see an unmistakable look of disdain in her eyes. Miss Parker folded her arms, eyeing Kayla's hair. "I thought I made it clear that distractions are not acceptable in my classroom," she said, her tone hard and unyielding. Kayla blinked, her mind racing with confusion and fear.
I'm sorry,
"Miss Parker, but I don't understand. I'm not distracting anyone." Miss Parker's gaze dropped to Kayla's braids, her lips curving in a faint, mocking smile. "This," she said, gesturing to Kayla's hair, "is distracting. It's too much. I expect students to focus on their studies, not to draw attention to themselves with unnecessary styles." The words felt like a slap, each one cutting deeper than the last. Kayla opened her mouth to protest, to explain that her hair wasn't a distraction, that it was a part of who she was. But before she could say anything, Miss Parker reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a pair of scissors. The silver blades glinted in the classroom light, and the entire room fell silent as Miss Parker took a step toward her. Kayla's stomach twisted with a cold, sickening dread. She instinctively took a step back, her voice coming out in a shaky whisper. "Please don't." But Miss Parker ignored her, reaching out and grabbing hold of one of her braids with a firm grip,
Kayla froze.
her heart hammering in her chest as she realized what was about to happen, the horror of it sinking in. With a quick, merciless snip, Miss Parker cut through the braid, the sound of the scissors slicing through her hair filling the silent classroom. Kayla's vision blurred as she watched her braid fall to the floor, a piece of herself lying there, stripped away without her consent. Miss Parker moved to the other side, taking another braid and cutting it with the same cold efficiency. Each snip felt like a piece of her identity being stolen, each cut a reminder that, in this place,
Who she was didn't matter.
the classroom erupted into laughter, muffled snickers and gasps that felt like daggers. Some students exchanged amused glances, clearly entertained by the spectacle. Others looked away, uncomfortable, yet none of them spoke up. Miss Parker stepped back, a look of satisfaction crossing her face. "There," she said, her voice dripping with condescension.
Now.
"Maybe you can focus on your work without drawing attention to yourself." Kayla's hand flew up to her head, touching the uneven patches where her braids had once been. Her face flushed with humiliation, her heart a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and helplessness. She fought back tears, refusing to let Miss Parker or her classmates see her break down.
Suddenly,
A voice cut through the silence. "Miss Parker, that was too far." Kayla looked up, her blurry vision clearing enough to see Alicia standing up, her face set in fierce defiance. Raj and Leah stood up beside her, their eyes blazing with anger and solidarity. "You can't just cut someone's hair like that," Raj said, his voice trembling with outrage. "It's her choice, her identity. You had no right." Miss Parker's face reddened, her jaw tightening as she took in their defiance. "Enough," she barked, her voice quivering with barely concealed fury. "All of you,
Out.
Go to the principal's office. I will not tolerate this kind of insubordination in my classroom. Alicia
Raj.
and Leah gathered their things, their heads held high as they walked to the door. Kayla followed, her heart heavy, but the touch of Alicia's hand on her shoulder grounded her, reminding her she wasn't alone. Underscore 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 underscore. The trip to the principal's office felt surreal, each step echoing in the quiet hallway. When they arrived, Principal Hayes looked up, surprised to see the four of them standing there. "What's going on?" he asked, his brow furrowing as he took in their expressions. Alicia stepped forward, her voice steady and unwavering. Miss Parker cut off Kayla's braids in front of the whole class. She said they were a distraction, but it was humiliating, and it wasn't right. Principal Hayes's expression darkened as he looked at Kayla, his gaze taking in the uneven patches of her hair, the rawness in her eyes. "Is this true, Kayla?" Kayla nodded, her voice barely audible. She said my hair was distracting, and then she cut it. I couldn't stop her." Principal Hayes took a deep breath, his face a mixture of shock and discomfort. He glanced down at the papers on his desk, as if searching for the right words. I'll have to speak with Miss Parker about this. But in the meantime, I don't want any more disruptions. I'm going to have to give you all detention for the way you confronted her." Alicia's jaw dropped. "Detention? After what she did?" Raj shook his head, disbelief and anger simmering in his eyes. "You're punishing us for standing up against her?" Principal Hayes raised his hand, his expression hardening. "That's enough. This is not up for discussion. Go to your next class, and you'll report for detention after school." The four of them stood there, staring at the principal in stunned silence. Kayla's heart sank, realizing that once again, she was being silenced,
her pain dismissed.
She turned and walked out of the office, her friends following close behind, their faces set in quiet anger. As they walked down the hallway, Kayla felt a tear slip down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, refusing to let them see her break. Her friends surrounded her, their presence a comforting shield against the storm that had engulfed her. Underscore 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 underscore. When the final bell rang, Kayla sat in detention, barely hearing the scratch of pencils or the rustling of paper from the other students around her. She felt hollow, each moment replaying in her mind the cold edge in Miss Parker's eyes, the sound of the scissors, the mocking laughter of her classmates. She hadn't just lost her braids. She had lost a part of herself. When detention finally ended, Alicia, Raj, and Leah were waiting for her outside. Alicia immediately wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly as Kayla's composure finally cracked. The tears she'd held back all day spilled over, each one a release of the pain and humiliation she'd bottled up. "You're not alone, Kayla," Alicia whispered fiercely. "We're going to stand with you. They're not going to get away with this." Kayla pulled back, wiping her eyes and nodding, a spark of strength igniting in her heart. Her friends believed her, stood by her, even when the school didn't. And, with them by her side, she knew she couldn't let this go. She wouldn't let them silence her. She was ready to fight. Kayla stepped into the car that afternoon, her heart heavy with the events of the day. She managed a small smile as she greeted her father, hoping he wouldn't notice the uneven edges of her hair, the rawness in her eyes, or the exhaustion weighing down her every movement. But as they started to drive, she saw her father glancing at her, his eyes narrowing with concern. After a few quiet moments, he asked, "Kayla, is everything okay?"
He spoke gently.
His tone filled with a father's worry.
Kayla biterlip.
Trying to keep her composure, she looked out the window, feeling her father's gaze on her, and her resolve broke. She reached up, running her fingers over the jagged ends of her hair where Miss Parker had cut her braids. She felt her breath hitch, the memories of the day flooding her mind. She took a shaky breath, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, it's not okay." Her father pulled the car over to the side of the road. Shifting into park, he turned to face her, his eyes filled with quiet alarm as he noticed her uneven hair for the first time. "Kayla," he said softly, his voice filled with worry. "What happened?" And with that gentle question, everything came tumbling out. The weight of the humiliation, the constant whispers, the harsh words.
And
Finally, Miss Parker's cutting of her braids in front of the entire class. She didn't hold back. The anger, the hurt, the injustice, it all spilled over as her father listened, his expression darkening with every word. "She just took the scissors. Dad." Kayla choked out, the words thick with pain. "And she cut my braids. She said my hair was distracting." And everyone laughed. Her father's face twisted with barely controlled rage. She had never seen him look so furious, so utterly heartbroken. He took a deep breath, his hands clenched tightly on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "She cut your hair?" he repeated, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "In front of everyone?" Kayla nodded, her voice small. "I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. She made me feel like I didn't belong there, like I was just something to laugh at." She could feel the weight of all her emotions bubbling up, the despair and humiliation that she had tried to hide for so long. Her father reached out, pulling her into a tight hug. "Kayla, I'm so sorry," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't deserve any of this. I can't believe this happened to you. But I promise you this, we're not letting this go. They're going to hear us." Kayla felt a spark of relief, a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. Her father wasn't going to ignore this. He wasn't going to let her pain go unnoticed. As they arrived home, her father immediately went into action. Kayla watched him spend hours on the phone, his voice firm and unwavering as he spoke to the school district, the school board, and anyone else who would listen. He recounted the story with precise details, his tone brimming with a father's righteous fury. "This wasn't just an isolated incident," he said to the school board member on the other end of the line. "Miss Parker has been singling out my daughter, humiliating her.
And now
She's crossed a line no teacher should ever cross. This is discrimination. Plain and simple. And I expect you to treat it as such." The person on the other end fell silent, their voice softening as they responded. "Mr. Johnson, I assure you that the school board takes allegations like this very seriously. We'll be opening a full investigation into Miss Parker's conduct." Her father pressed on, his voice growing even stronger. "I have witnesses, Kayla's friends who have seen this abuse firsthand. I expect transparency, and I won't stop until my daughter has the justice she deserves." For the first time, Kayla felt the weight begin to lift. She saw her father's strength, his resolve, and it gave her hope. The next day, her father gathered testimonies from Alicia, Raj,
and Leah,
each of them bravely recounting what they had seen in Miss Parker's class. They described the disdainful comments, the constant targeting, and the brutal incident with the braids. The school board was horrified by the testimonies. Over the following days, they conducted a thorough investigation, interviewing other students, reviewing records, and diving deep into Miss Parker's history. What they found went beyond Kayla. Her teacher's actions weren't limited to just one student. Her prejudice and harsh treatment had impacted multiple students over the years, each of them quietly suffering under her biased authority. Underscore 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 underscore. A few days later, Kayla's father received a call from the head of the school board. The voice on the other end was solemn, almost apologetic. Mr. Johnson, I wanted to inform you that the board has concluded its investigation. Miss Parker has been suspended effective immediately, pending further disciplinary action. The principal has also been suspended for his role in allowing this behavior to continue unchecked. Kayla's father thanked them, his voice calm but firm. I appreciate your response, but I expect long-term changes. My daughter and other students deserve to feel safe and respected at school. The board member agreed, sounding genuinely remorseful. We are deeply sorry for what Kayla endured. Mr. Johnson, we're committed to implementing changes to ensure this never happens again. A formal apology was sent to Kayla and her family, acknowledging the pain and trauma caused, and recognizing that the inaction of the administration had allowed such behavior to persist unchecked. A few days later, the board organized a school-wide assembly to address the incident publicly, making it clear that such behavior would not be tolerated. Underscore 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 underscore. The auditorium was packed with students, the air filled with a tense anticipation as they waited for the assembly to begin. Principal Hayes was notably absent, his empty seat at the front serving as a stark reminder of the changes underway. A senior member of the school board took the stage, his face grave as he addressed the student body. We're here today to address an issue that has affected some of our students in deeply painful ways, he began, his voice filled with regret. After a thorough investigation, we have found instances of discrimination and mistreatment within our school. As a result, disciplinary actions have been taken, and steps will be implemented to ensure that this kind of behavior is never tolerated here again. The room fell silent, a weight settling over the students as the reality of his words sank in. The board member's voice softened, a tone of sincerity filling the space. We are deeply sorry to any student who has been made to feel unwelcome, overlooked, or mistreated. Our school is meant to be a place of learning,
growth,
and respect. We failed in upholding those values, but we are committed to doing better. Kayla sat among her friends, feeling a mixture of relief and vindication. She squeezed Alicia's hand, the weight of everything finally beginning to lift. This wasn't just about her, it was about all the students who had been treated unfairly, who had been made to feel small, unimportant, and alone. The board concluded the assembly with an announcement that all teachers and staff would undergo training on diversity, inclusion, and anti-bullying practices. They promised to prioritize student well-being and create stronger systems for reporting and addressing discrimination. When Kayla returned to her classes that day, she noticed an immediate difference. Miss Parker's desk was empty, a substitute teacher standing in her place.
Her classmates,
who had once whispered and laughed at her, now avoided her gaze, their expressions uncertain, some even apologetic. As she walked down the hallway with Alicia, Raj, and Leah by her side, Kayla felt a newfound strength rising within her. The pain and humiliation she had suffered were still there, but now they were joined by a quiet, powerful sense of triumph. Her voice had been heard. Her father had stood by her. Her friends had defended her. And for the first time,
she felt that maybe,
just maybe, she could finally begin to heal. When she got home that evening, her father was waiting, his face filled with pride as he welcomed her with open arms. "How is today?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. Kayla smiled, a real smile, one she hadn't felt in months. It was good.
Dad.
Really good. And for the first time, she believed it. Kayla walked through Greenwood Middle School with a new lightness in her step. The oppressive weight that had clung to her for months was gone, replaced by a growing confidence. It felt surreal. The whispers and snickers that had once followed her down the hall were now absent, replaced by quiet nods or even a few awkward apologies from classmates who,
Perhaps for the first time.
realized the depth of what she'd been through. As she reached her history class, Kayla's heart skipped. Miss Parker's desk was empty, replaced by a smiling woman who radiated warmth. Miss Rodriguez, the new substitute teacher, greeted each student individually as they entered, her tone friendly and welcoming. When Kayla stepped inside, Miss Rodriguez's face lit up with a genuine smile.
Kayla.
"I've heard wonderful things about you," she said warmly, making Kayla pause in surprise. "I'm so glad you're in my class." The words, simple as they were, meant more to Kayla than she could express. She managed a smile and took her seat, her mind reeling from how different the classroom felt. There was no longer an air of judgment, no sense of being watched and found wanting. For the first time in months, she felt she could breathe easily in this room. The lesson began, and Miss Rodriguez encouraged everyone to participate, nodding encouragingly at each response. When Kayla raised her hand to answer a question, Miss Rodriguez smiled, listened attentively, and nodded approvingly. "That's an insightful answer."
Kayla.
"Thank you." Kayla's heart swelled with pride, and a warmth spread through her chest. She glanced at her friends Alicia,
Raj.
and Leah, who gave her encouraging smiles. The isolation she'd felt for so long had been replaced with the unbreakable support of those who had stood by her, fought for her, and believed in her. Underscore 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 underscore. At lunch,
Kayla.
Alicia, Raj, and Leah sat together at their usual table, the atmosphere lighter than ever. They laughed over stories of their families, their favorite shows, and plans for the upcoming school break. For once, they weren't watching over their shoulders, bracing for harsh whispers or taunts. It was as if the entire school had shifted, its energy transformed by the events of the last few weeks. After they finished eating, Alicia leaned over, her expression serious but thoughtful. "I don't think I'll ever forget that day in Miss Parker's class," she said quietly. "It was horrible, but I'm glad we stood up. We needed to. And because of you."
Kayla.
"Things are different here now." Raj nodded.
Yeah.
"It's like people finally get it. You know? Like they're actually starting to realize the impact of their words and actions." Leah smiled, reaching over to squeeze Kayla's hand. "You changed things."
Kayla.
"We all did. But you were the one who made us realize we couldn't just sit by and watch." Kayla felt a rush of gratitude and pride. She looked around the table, at the friends who had been her lifeline through her darkest moments. "I couldn't have done it without you guys," she said, her voice soft but full of conviction. "You were there when no one else was. I'll never forget that." Alicia grinned, nudging her shoulder.
Hey.
"You're stuck with us now, like it or not." They all laughed, the sound echoing through the cafeteria, a testament to the strength they had built together. For the first time, Kayla didn't feel like an outsider in this school. She felt like she belonged. Underscore 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 underscore. That afternoon, Miss Rodriguez assigned a project on civil rights and social justice, encouraging each student to choose a historical figure who had fought for equality. Kayla knew instantly who she would choose: Rosa Parks. She had always admired the quiet strength of Rosa Parks, the courage it took to stand up and say no in a world that demanded silence. When Kayla presented her project to the class a few days later, she poured her heart into every word. As she spoke about Rosa Parks, she felt a deep connection to the struggle for dignity and respect. She spoke with a confidence that surprised even her, her voice strong and clear as she shared the story of a woman who had refused to accept injustice. When she finished, her classmates applauded, and Miss Rodriguez beamed at her. "Thank you,
Kayla," she said.
her voice filled with warmth and pride. "You spoke with such conviction. I think Rosa Parks would be proud of you." The words hit Kayla like a wave of emotion. She looked around, seeing not just her friends, but her classmates watching her with respect and understanding. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as the target of ridicule, but as someone valued, someone respected. Underscore 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 underscore. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of healing and growth. The school introduced workshops on diversity, empathy, and anti-bullying, with students and staff alike required to attend. Kayla's father had played a pivotal role in helping the school board implement these changes, working with them to ensure that no other student would face what she had endured. He became an advocate for change, using his voice to make sure the administration upheld their promises. Kayla attended the workshops with Alicia,
Raj,
and Leah, feeling a sense of satisfaction as she watched her classmates confront their own biases and assumptions. During one session, the counselor leading the workshop asked each student to reflect on a time they had felt misunderstood or excluded. The room grew quiet as students considered their experiences. And for the first time, Kayla saw her classmates in a new light. When the workshop ended, a few students came up to her, their faces solemn. One of them, a boy who had once laughed at Miss Parker's taunts, looked at her, his expression sincere. "Kayla,
I
didn't get it before. I'm really sorry for the way I treated you." Kayla looked at him, a mixture of relief and acceptance filling her heart. She nodded, her voice calm. "Thank you. That means a lot." Each apology, each kind word, felt like another piece of herself returning, healing the wounds that had been inflicted. She knew not everyone would apologize, that some might never fully understand what she'd been through. But for those who did, she was willing to forgive. Underscore 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 underscore. At the end of the school year, Greenwood Middle held a ceremony to recognize students' achievements and contributions. Kayla hadn't expected anything special, but when her name was called, she felt a wave of surprise and pride. She walked up to the stage, her father watching from the audience, his face beaming with pride. The school board presented her with an award for resilience and courage, acknowledging the strength she had shown and the changes she had helped bring about. As Kayla stood on the stage, looking out over the audience, she felt a sense of pride that was almost overwhelming. Her father clapped, his eyes brimming with emotion, and her friends cheered loudly, their support as strong as ever. Afterward, they gathered in the courtyard, the warmth of the afternoon sun casting a golden glow over them. Kayla looked around at her friends, her father, and the teachers who had supported her. She felt lighter, no longer weighed down by the fear and isolation that had once consumed her. Her father pulled her into a hug, his voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Kayla," he murmured. "You showed them what it means to be brave. I'm so proud of you." Kayla hugged him back, feeling the strength and love in his embrace. "We did it, Dad. I couldn't have done this without you." As they drove home together, Kayla looked back at Greenwood Middle School one last time. She knew her journey wasn't over, that there would still be challenges ahead.
But now,
She felt ready to face them. She had found her voice, her strength, and her place. And she knew that whatever came next, she would stand tall, armed with the love and support of those who had stood by her. She was no longer just the quiet girl who tried to blend in. She was someone who had fought for respect, who had been seen, and who had helped create a legacy of empathy and understanding that would echo through the halls of Greenwood for years to come. The end of the school year was finally here, and Greenwood Middle School was buzzing with excitement. Students hurried through the hallways, filling yearbooks with signatures, laughter, and promises to stay in touch over the summer. But for Kayla, this day held a deeper significance. She wasn't just ending a school year, she was closing a chapter on one of the most challenging times of her life. As she packed up her things from her locker, she felt a wave of mixed emotions: pride for what she had accomplished, relief for the changes her courage had sparked, and gratitude for the friends and family who had stood by her, refusing to let her face it alone. She touched the ends of her hair, which had begun to grow back in neat braids, a reminder of her resilience and strength. When she turned around, she saw Alicia,
Raj,
and Leah waiting for her. Their faces lit up with excitement and pride. They gathered around her, each one offering a word of encouragement, a hug, and a promise to stick together no matter what the future held. "You ready to get out of here?" Alicia asked, a grin stretching across her face. Kayla laughed, nodding. More than ready. But before they could leave, the announcement system crackled to life, and the principal's voice came over the speakers. "Attention, everyone. Before we close out the year, I'd like all students and staff to gather in the auditorium for a final announcement." Kayla exchanged curious glances with her friends as they made their way to the auditorium. When they entered, they saw the entire school gathered, whispering and wondering what this last-minute assembly was all about.
Principal Ayes,
who had recently returned after the investigation, stood on the stage with a serious but kind expression. Once the room quieted, he cleared his throat and began to speak. "I want to thank each of you for your resilience and your commitment to making Greenwood Middle a better place. This year, we've faced some tough lessons about respect, inclusion, and accountability. And while it's been challenging, I believe we've grown stronger because of it." He paused, his eyes scanning the audience, then continued, "Today, I want to recognize someone who has shown remarkable courage and strength, someone who inspired us all to be better. Kayla Johnson, would you please join me on stage?" Kayla felt her heart leap into her throat as the auditorium erupted into applause. Her friends nudged her forward, grinning and cheering as she made her way to the front. The principal extended his hand, guiding her to the center of the stage. "Kayla," he began, his voice warm and sincere, "you showed us what it means to stand up for justice, to demand respect, and to create positive change, even when it's difficult. Because of you, this school is a better, more inclusive place. You've left a legacy that will be felt for years to come." The school board member who had overseen the investigation stepped forward, holding a plaque that gleamed under the stage lights. "In recognition of your bravery and determination, we present you with this award for outstanding student leadership. Your courage has paved the way for a more compassionate and respectful school community." Kayla accepted the plaque, her hands trembling slightly as she looked out over the crowd. The faces of her classmates,
teachers,
and friends blurred as her eyes filled with tears. She could see her father in the audience, clapping proudly, his face filled with emotion. Taking a deep breath, Kayla stepped up to the microphone. Feeling the weight of the moment, she looked out at the sea of faces, many of whom had once been strangers, some who had been unkind, but now they were united in this shared experience.
"Thank you," she began,
her voice steady. This year was hard. There were days I didn't want to come to school. Days when I felt like I didn't belong. But I learned something important. That when you stand up for yourself, when you refuse to be silent in the face of unfairness, people notice. They listen. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I couldn't have done any of this alone. My friends, my family, and everyone who believed in me gave me the strength to keep going. And because of that, I'm standing here today, not just for myself, but for every student who's ever felt like they didn't belong, who's ever felt alone. You have a place here. You are valued, and you have a voice that deserves to be heard. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Kayla's gaze fell on Alicia, Raj, and Leah, who smiled back at her with pride shining in their eyes. As the applause swelled, Kayla stepped back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that this was what she had been fighting for, not just for herself, but for a school that would see every student, a place where everyone could feel safe and valued. Underscore 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 underscore. After the assembly, Kayla's father met her outside, pulling her into a tight hug. You did it, Kayla, he whispered, his voice filled with pride. I couldn't be prouder of you. Kayla hugged him back, a sense of peace filling her. Thank you,
Dad, for everything.
I couldn't have done it without you. As they walked through the school one last time, her friends joined them, laughing and talking about their plans for the summer. They shared dreams of the future, of high school and beyond, knowing they would carry the bond they had forged with them wherever they went. In the coming months, Kayla watched as the school continued to transform. New teachers joined, dedicated to creating a positive environment. Anti-bullying and inclusion programs were put in place, ensuring students had a way to report any mistreatment. Kayla even returned to Greenwood Middle that fall as a guest speaker, sharing her story with incoming students, encouraging them to stand up for what was right. Her story became a beacon, a reminder of the power of resilience and the impact one person could have on an entire community. And though her journey at Greenwood had come to an end, she knew it was only the beginning. She had found her voice, her strength, and a purpose greater than herself. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that she could make a difference that she already had. As she looked back on the school that had once felt so hostile, she felt only gratitude, because it was here, in this very place, that she had discovered the power of her own voice. And, with that power, she was determined to leave her mark on the world, just as she had left it here, in the halls of Greenwood Middle School.